My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in a town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home around the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year, we'd gotten into a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember what it was about now, but it was one of those fights where we didn't speak, text, or call each other the whole next day. That afternoon, I was lying in bed getting work done. It was a Tuesday, and I was pretty sure his last class finished at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays, meaning he'd likely be home by 2:30. But around 1 p.m., I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he's home an hour early today. It wasn't unusual for him to skip his last class once in a while, so I didn't think much of it. In fact, I was mostly mentally preparing for the awkward post-fight, "Hey, how's it going?" conversation. So I stayed in bed, working, waiting for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed and I had earplugs half in, as I usually do when I'm working, but I could still hear the heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment, just like always. If we hadn't been in the middle of a fight and I wasn't so preoccupied with the tension, I might have noticed how strange it was that the footsteps were so slow, or how long he spent walking around the living room. But I didn't think much of it. I just lay there, waiting for him to finally come in. Then, the bedroom door slowly opened, just a few inches. I turned my head toward it, ready to give him a sort of awkward, "We've been fighting for 24 hours, huh?" smile. But the door didn't open any further. I saw a woman's hand with red nail polish gripping the doorknob. Whoever it was slowly closed the door again, just as quietly as they'd opened it, without entering the room. I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and froze for a few seconds, my mind racing. My first thought, that was not my boyfriend. Then I thought, could that have been his mom, his sister, the landlady? For some reason, I convinced myself it had to be one of them. So I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. No one was there, but the room smelled heavily of women's perfume. That's when I realized his mom and sister don't have keys and have never come over before. The landlady has never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, shaking uncontrollably. There's a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stepped outside and called my boyfriend. He picked up, and I asked if his mom or sister might have come over unannounced. He said, "No, don't move. I'm calling the police." The police arrived within minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, by then, whoever it was had already gone. What was strange, though, was that nothing was missing, not even the jar full of money sitting right by the entrance. Nothing seemed touched. It looked like the intruder came straight to the bedroom, saw me lying there, panicked, and left. Plus, you can't open that big wooden front door without a key. For a few days, my boyfriend and I convinced ourselves it must have been the landlady being nosy. I started to feel better. Still, we demanded that the landlady change our locks. When she came with her husband to do it, she made a discovery. There was a small square area around the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. She said someone must have used tools to break into the apartment. Then, a day or two later, my boyfriend told me, "I have to tell you something, but don't freak out." He said the orange kitchen scissors were missing. Of course, I freaked out. I tore the apartment apart looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months now, and they're still gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into our apartment, doesn't touch or take anything valuable, not even the money jar. Takes a pair of scissors from the kitchen, walks straight to the bedroom, sees me in bed, and immediately leaves. I never found out who opened that door that day. I hope I never do. This was back in 2014. I was 17 at the time, and I had to take the bus to and from school. The bus stop was on the main road, so I would have to walk a few blocks to get to my apartment complex. One day, I was walking home from school when a Honda van pulled over. A girl stepped out, introduced herself, and said she was new to the area and wanted to make friends. I gave her my number, and pretty quickly, we made plans to have dinner together. Maybe a day or two later, she picked me up in the same van, but this time there was a man driving and another young woman sitting in the back. She hadn't mentioned them before, but I didn't think much of it. There were a lot of red flags I ignored. I was young and naive. During dinner, the man did all the talking while the two girls stayed mostly quiet. Another red flag. He spoke in this fake, overly nice tone and kept asking me personal questions. Then he started saying strange things, like how he could read minds, and began telling me details about myself that he somehow already knew. I had no idea how he knew any of that, so I believed him. After dinner, we stopped by their house, which was in a completely different city from where my apartment was. Remember, the girl had told me she lived nearby, yet another red flag. It was a really nice house, and he had a Mercedes parked in the driveway. My young mind was impressed. He told me that they were all roommates and that they hustled together. That night, he drove me home, just him this time, and tried to convince me to be a part of their lifestyle. A couple of days later, I was only texting with him. The girl barely talked to me anymore, but he tricked me into thinking he was this kind, genuine person. Eventually, he asked me to pack some clothes and come spend the night. After hours of talking, he convinced me to leave my mom's house and move in with them. I texted my mom to say I was moving out, and since I was almost 18, she reluctantly agreed. That's when everything went to hell. He wasn't the nice, charming person I had met. As soon as I moved in, he told me the girls were sex workers, and that I would become one too when I turned 18. He started controlling everything about me, how I dressed, how I did my hair. He gave me a new phone with a tracking app installed and told me I couldn't contact my mom, my friends, or anyone else. He kept insisting that he could read my mind and hear my thoughts. Even the smallest mistakes I made, he would punish me for. He duct taped my hands and feet, tased me, stabbed me with screwdrivers, threw me off the second floor by one leg, and punched me until I passed out, all with a grin on his face. I'll never forget that look. His eyes would go completely black, like there was nothing human behind them. It was like something out of a horror movie. I couldn't believe people like this really existed. He also made me watch disturbing videos, people being tortured or killed while he held a knife to my neck. It was pure evil. When the girls were out working at the hotels, he would assault me every single day. He lied and said I was special, that I was the only one he was intimate with. He said if I ever tried to leave or told anyone where I was, he would kill me and them. He went into disturbing detail about how he'd do it and where he'd dump my body. One day he had me lie down and beat me so badly in the stomach while choking me with his leg across my neck that I blacked out. When I woke up, my vision was blurry, and there was a huge knot on the back of my head. I couldn't even stand up straight. I had no idea what else he had done while I was unconscious, but I knew then, if I didn't escape soon, he was going to kill me. I didn't sleep that night. I waited until I heard him snoring, then ran for it. I didn't take anything, not even the phone, since it had a tracker on it. Somehow, by the grace of God, I made it out. I didn't speak to my mom for 3 months out of fear. And I was right. He had gone looking for me at her apartment. I don't even know how he knew where she lived. Eventually, I reached out to her. She had filed a missing persons report and broke down crying when I called. She thought I had been murdered. I tried to move on with my life. I did end up stripping. I still do sometimes. Fast forward to 2017, one of the girls finally set him up. She was smart about it, and that monster is now rotting in prison. I found out because detectives were looking for me. There are articles about him and everything. I'm still in contact with the girls. I don't blame them. I know it wasn't their fault. We still talk sometimes. I was 21, had recently become a police officer, and had also just been dumped. So my friend suggested I try Tinder. As a young cop, I had that I'm invincible and can take on anyone mentality. I matched with a very good-looking, way out of my league girl. We chatted for a while and eventually set up a date. She said she knew a great open field where we could look at the stars and hang out, and that I could meet her at her house first. The night came, and I was excited. She seemed just as excited when I picked her up. She guided me to the field, and it really was a nice spot. Open space, woods, deer, and other wildlife. While we were parked there, I noticed some dim headlights in the distance. Then a van started driving toward us and pulled up right in front of my car, close enough to nearly block me from leaving. I told her to stay in the car while I went to see what was going on. I grabbed my flashlight and walked up. In the driver's seat was a decent-sized man. I asked him what was happening and if he could back up a little. He was very polite and said he was the owner of the property and didn't mean to scare us. He explained that had been having trouble with poachers on his land and just wanted to make sure we weren't going to shoot at anything. I assured him we were only there to look at stars and wildlife. He seemed fine with that, told me to have a nice date, and drove away. After that, the girl kept texting nonstop. About an hour later, I saw headlights coming toward us again, this time at a really fast pace. We hopped in the car and I moved it into a more defensive position. The same man came close enough to almost hit my car. Then she suddenly jumped out of the car and ran toward him. That's when I knew I was screwed. I got out and gave them commands to back up and get on the ground. Neither of them complied. The man charged at me and knocked me to the ground. Luckily, I managed to get him on his back and stand up. Then I saw my date grab a metal pipe from the van. She told me they had a gun and to give them my money and my truck, and I wouldn't get hurt. Of course, with my I'm invincible mentality, I said no. She started crying and said they didn't want to hurt me. Then he began walking back toward the car. At that point, I told them I was a cop, drew my concealed firearm, and ordered them to get on the ground. After a few seconds of shock, they complied. I called 911, told dispatch my name and badge number, said I had two at gunpoint and needed backup immediately. I gave the best directions I could to that field. While I was still on the phone, they both fled. And again, because of my stupid, young cop mentality, I chased them. I ran after the man who took off into the woods at the edge of the field. I chased him for maybe 30 seconds before hearing 3 loud pops and seeing muzzle flashes. That I'm invincible mindset disappeared instantly. I ran like hell back to my car and sped out of there. I went back to the area where I'd picked her up, called dispatch again, and had officers meet me there. Of course, the first 2 officers to arrive were my sergeant and my field training officer. They were completely understanding and didn't give me too much crap about it. Not at first, anyway. The most used words were dumbass and stupid rookie. I hopped in their patrol car and we headed back to the field. Luckily, the van was still there. I was told to keep quiet and stay inside the car unless they started taking fire. They cleared the area and began searching the van. When my sergeant and FTO came back, they both looked pale, horrified even. They told me to come look in the back. Inside were several knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, a large amount of rifle ammunition, handcuffs, and what looked like dried blood. In the passenger seat, they found an AR-15 style rifle and 2 handguns. We immediately called for more backup and detectives. When the investigators checked the blood, it turned out it wasn't blood after all. The plates were stolen and the van itself had been reported stolen too. I still get crap about that whole encounter to this day, but thankfully no one got hurt. And it'll tell you this much: I will never use online dating again. When I was 19, in the early 90s, my brother and his wife were newly married and living in Baltimore. I was from Maryland, but hadn't spent much time in that city. I knew it wasn't totally safe in certain parts, but I figured I'd be fine since I was just driving straight to my brother and sister-in-law's house. Until I turned onto the wrong street. It was Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and back then it was a stretch of abandoned gas stations, sketchy bars, and boarded-up houses. A few people were walking right down the middle of the street, drinking out of paper bags. I knew I had messed up. Instead of freaking out and getting even more lost, I pulled into an abandoned gas station. There was a bank of payphones, so I parked about 10 feet from them, hopped out, and called my brother. He sounded impatient at first. He knew the city really well, but it was my first time driving there, and I was trying to write down his directions as he gave them to me. Just then, something caught my eye. I looked over at my car and 3 men were leaning against it, 2 on the passenger side, 1 against the driver's side front door. They were all staring at me, arms crossed. I started silently crying, thankful that I had sunglasses on. My brother heard me sniffling and said, "Why are you upset? I'm giving you directions." But I couldn't tell him what was going on. The men were within earshot. I got the rest of the directions, put the paper in my pocket, and walked toward my car. The man leaning against my door reached up and wiped a tear from my cheek. Then he said, "Why you crying, baby? Nothing bad has happened yet." Without even thinking, I responded, full on sobbing now. "I just shot my boyfriend, and I'm in a lot of trouble." That's all I got out before all three men took off in separate directions, full sprints away from me. If I hadn't been gifted that lie from my guardian angels, or whoever was watching over me that day, who knows what would have happened.